Good evening and welcome to the Bellevue City Council meeting for August 25th, 2014. First of all, if I could have you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for the invocation by Reverend Rorty Smith, Bellevue Truth Ministries, 2402 Franklin Street, Bellevue. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, all, and thank you for the invitation to do the invocation. Again, Pastor Rorty Smith from Bible Truth Ministries, 2402 Franklin Street, right here in Bellevue. Quietly celebrating 19 years of ministry on the second weekend of September, and been glad to be located right here. With several things going on tonight, I saw the minutes and I had a moment to say to the mayor, I want to say thank you all for the work that you do for this city, because when you can drive up by City Hall and the news trucks aren't out there and the news reporters aren't chasing anybody down, nobody wants to just stick a mic in your face. You only get a few chances a year to get that, and usually it's bad. So nobody asked me what I feel about anything, and I didn't see a whole lot of people that look like me coming in here. So I'm not in trouble. I know that. So it's good to have a police force and leaders of your city that are taking care of business in such an excellent way that we, of the people of the city, don't have to really worry about anything. It's in good hands. So Lord, we just thank you for our leaders tonight. Thank you for the leadership that they provide in this community over every area of the direction that the city needs, whether it's municipalities, protection and police serving the city, even taking care of our streets, highways. Lord, we just thank you that our city is being run well, that it's well organized, that the people that we've selected and elected to these positions, that they maintain integrity over every area of their responsibility, that as they carry out the mandate that they've been charged to do, to represent each council and ward, and Lord, as they are enabled and strengthened, let them not be hindered by any activities or any distractions that would keep them from being able to complete the tasks that are at hand, so that our city continues to be well organized and well run. And so, Lord, we just thank you that as we stand here tonight and express the joy of being free in a society where we can elect leaders and see them carry out our wishes, we just encourage them, we support and stand behind them, our police force, those that members of the community that work in capacities where there's not much thanks, but we say thank you tonight. And Lord, we remember always our service members from this community that serve here, near, and abroad. And we continue to stand with them for a hedge of protection around about them. Lord, those that stand in leadership, and from the president to elected members of Congress and legislature, we pray that they continue to maintain steadfast order and discipline over their lives, so that they continue to maintain this United States in an orderly manner. So Lord, we just say thank you. We give you the thanks and the praise for what you're doing, what you continue to do as we celebrate 19 years in this fine city. We're glad to be here and look forward to continued success and many more celebrations as we will come in and recognize that we're celebrating 19 years, but we also know that coming on the anniversary of September 11th, that many hearts will be turned toward some of the troubles that we face. Let those that we're reminded constantly, consistently, let them be encouraged that this United States is a strong nation, and we rise up. Whenever we're hit, we get back up, and we stand strong in the face of all dangers, and those seen and unseen, and we stand united. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Smith. I also want to give a shout out and a welcome to two students that are here visiting from the University of Hiroshima, Japan. They're in the back there. Cody and Ryota. They are students taking classes this summer at Bellevue University. Welcome. Item number 2, Kay, could you please call roll?
Mr. Carmichael.
Here.
Mrs. Saniuk.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Knudsen.
Here.
Mr. Preister.
Here.
Mrs. Flood.
Present.
2A, this meeting will be conducted according to the Open Meetings Act, posted in the entry to the council chambers. Item 3, approval of minutes and advisory committee reports. 3A, approval of agenda. Councilman Blood.
Motion to approve.
Second by Mr. Preister. Any discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. 3B, approval of consent agenda. Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Councilman Blood. Any discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item 3C is under consent. 3D, consent. Item 4, approval of claims, consent. Item 5, none. Item 6, liquor license. Item 6A, Cheeks Bar and Barbecue, Inc., application for Class C liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits, both on and off sale at 303 Fort Cook Road North, and for Shayna L. Dowd as manager of the license. If you would like to come forward. Welcome. If you could state your name and sign in, please.
Shauna L. Dowd.
Thank you. If there's any comments that you'd like to make for the council? You have an opening date. Where are you located?
We are located at 303 North Fort Cook Road. We are going to be a smokehouse, barbecue, and bar. Right now, we want a soft opening where we invite the council, chief of police, fire departments, local businesses. Right now, we're shooting for September 5th. I will get, if that changes to the Friday right after that, it'll be the Friday right after that if it's not for the 5th. So we would like you guys to all come. It's going to be a buffet style type of thing for our soft opening is what it's going to be. So you guys would be invited.
Thank you. Mr. Cook?
I just got a quick question now.
Yes, sir.
What used to be in this building so that we could sort of
It
landmark
was
it?
Cheers. It was a
Okay.
bar already. The owner owned it for about a year. And it was, before that, I guess, Amarillo.
Barbecue.
Is there anything planned for music, dancing, or is it just going to be the restaurant?
I also own a company called Tell All Entertainment. We manage, promote, put on shows for local music. So we'll have some entertainment on the weekends, from jazz to country, to rock to, different events. We'll have military night. We'll have, the city night. We'll have the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce. We'll have different events that will also run on the weekends too for specials and events.
Well, the primary business will be the restaurant.
Would be a bar and barbecue.
Yeah, it's both. We're gonna be open at 11 for, lunches, and stop the barbecue about 6, 7, and then the bar, and then there's bar food and whatever's left over from the barbecue that day, prepared for the next day. So it's both.
Then how late do you stay open?
That would be the 2 a.m. for the liquor license bar part.
All right.
Thank you. If you want to step aside, I'll go ahead and open for public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please do so at this time. See none, I'll close the public hearing. Councilman Blood?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve recommendation to the Nebraska Liquor Commission for Cheech's Bar and Barbecue Incorporated and their application for a Class C liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits both on and off sale at 303 Fort Cook Road North, and for Shauna L. Dowd as manager of the license.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Saniuk. Any discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Item 6B. Application of Paul Clubundy, Inc., doing business as Century Lounge for special designated liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits at an outdoor beer garden barbecue cook-off at 2109 Franklin Street on September 20th, 2014, from 6 a.m. until 2 a.m.
Hello, I'm Nicole Logan from Century.
Good evening.
Hi.
Is there any statement or anything you'd like to say? No? Okay. I'll go ahead and open for public. I'll open for public hearing on this item. Anyone to speak on this item, please do so at this time. See none, I'll close the public hearing. Mr. Carmichael,
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission approval of the application of Paul Clubundy, Inc., DBA Century Lounge for a special designated liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits at an outdoor beer garden barbecue cook-off at 2109 Franklin on September 30th, 2014. Excuse me,
20th.
September 20th,
Mayor.
2014, from 6 o'clock a.m. until 2 o'clock a.m.
Councilman Blood.
Mayor, can Councilman Carmichael please add in the alternate date of September 27th that's also included on the application? With an alternate
With an
date.
alternate date of September 27th.
Thank
And I'll
you,
second
Councilman
it.
Blood. Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilman Blood, any discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item 6C, application of Station House, Inc. for special designated liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits during a fundraising event at Champions Village, 14402 Harlan Lewis Drive on September 13, 2013, from 3 p.m. till 2 a.m.
Hi,
Welcome.
Dee Gray, Station House, Inc. This is the second annual Bellevue Community Foundation tailgate party down at Champions Village. We are asking for an SDL so that we can sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits. Chief Elbert's, 2 of his off-duty officers will be working with us that afternoon for crowd control, should we need crowd control. Hopefully, we would have a crowd. That's the goal. The event starts the gates will open at 4 p.m. That night is the Nebraska versus Fresno State football game. The unfortunate thing is that game doesn't start until 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. But from 6 p.m. till 9 p.m., the dueling pianos will be there, putting on their show, and then the game starts. There will be food available for purchase. There will be, and there are tailgate options available if anyone is interested in sponsoring. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I'll now open for public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please do so at this time. See none, I'll close the public hearing. Mr. Cook,
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission on the application of Station House, Inc. for a special designated liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits during the fundraising event at Champions Village, 14402 Harlan Lewis Drive on September 13th, 2014, from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Second.
second by Mr. Knutson. Any discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Gray. Item number 7, ordinance for adoption, third reading. 7A, ordinance number 3778. Kay, please read the ordinance.
Ordinance number 3778, an ordinance of the City of Bellevue, Nebraska, classifying the employees of the city, fixing the ranges of compensation of such employees, providing a pay range schedule, providing for publication in pamphlet form, repealing ordinance number 3695, and providing for an effective date.
Mr. Sullivan.
If there's a motion to approve this ordinance, in regard to referencing each of the employee associations' contracts, if Obviously, if there's anything to move on the ordinance, we'll need a motion and then a motion to amend, because we made several amendments. But I would include an additional amendment, and that would be to take off the effective dates of each of those contracts, so that as we renegotiate each new contract, we wouldn't have to revise this ordinance.
Mr. Cook.
Mayor, we had a lot of discussion on this afternoon. I know that 2 weeks ago, there was a request for public input. I'd like to make a motion that we open it back up for public input.
I'd second that.
Any discussion? Please vote.
All voted yes.
I'll now open for public input, public hearing on ordinance number 3778.
Chuck Frederick, 1511 Madison Street. Two weeks ago, when I was up here regarding this ordinance, I suggested that to delay it even longer than this. I don't think it should be passed on until after the election, and let the new people, if there are new people, to help decide on this, because it seems to me what I heard, and I was here at this pre-council meeting, you spoke about 45 minutes debating back or discussing back and forth and trying to clarify this, that you really weren't clear, people weren't really clear as to how it was. And I think it'd be better if you just waited until after the new election, because in my opinion, it doesn't have to be done now. After hearing it today and also hearing it 2 weeks ago, I don't see the necessity of having it done right now. And so I would suggest that. The other thing that was brought up that I'm a little confused about is that in the contracts, you talked about contracts, and if there is a new mayor, that mayor is able to appoint a city administrator, a city attorney, a city treasurer, and a city clerk. And if I understand this clearly, number one is that if the contracts for the city administrator and the city attorney are two of the people under contract, the other one is the assistant city administrator. I assume that if there is a new mayor and there is new city administrator, new city attorney, those contracts are done at that time. Or if the same mayor stays in, I would assume those contracts have to be renewed again. I hope I'm correct on that. But what I'm not clear on is that how the assistant city administrator became on contract, and what happens if there is a new mayor, if that new mayor wants to eliminate that position, and suppose he's under contract. What does that mean then? Does that contract end at the election time or at the end of the year? How long does his contract go?
I honestly can't remember. My assumption is we probably paralleled it with the period of the mayor, but it may be a ongoing one. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I don't think it's really relevant to whether you pass this or not tonight.
Right.
But
Mr. Burley.
I guess for point of clarification, the assistant city administrator's position is not appointed position by the mayor or confirmed by the council. The original form of the contract was approved by the council. That's actually a position like a director's position that is hired by the city administrator. So the terms of that particular contract allow for due process. If the person were going to be terminated for other than cause, there's a normal process that has to be followed, but it does not run with the term of the mayor because it's not appointed.
Okay. I'm sure you're right in regard to the city council voting on his contract, but I don't recall it myself, but I'm sure it was done that way. But in either case, I will still recommend that you wait and not vote on this till after the election. Thank you.
Steve Draper at 9807 South 24th Street. I would just like to reiterate the same input I provided 2 weeks ago, and that is that, well, in addition to that, I don't know that there is a urgency to do this right now tonight, as Chuck Frederick mentioned. We have some time. I don't know that there's I may be incorrect. Is there a statutory time in which this has to be done by? I don't know if that's true or not, but I think we have some time still. And I would, before we increase these authorized ranges, in some cases, as you look at each of the offices, some of them have gone up by as much as 47 to 54%. Before we do those kinds of increases, those high percentages, I really think to do due diligence, you should also do a comparison and see what non-government positions of equivalent of type of work are getting paid. I think you need to look at that before you set this. And I urge you to do that and take the time to do it. It's in the city's best interest. You know, as we move forward, I think this is going to be a trend that is going to happen in more and more cities, that the voters are going to want these public paid positions to not be out of whack money-wise with what the private sector is getting. And I urge you to do that. And also, you know, as Chuck Frederick said, we could postpone this until after that is done, or the council members feel more comfortable with this. Thank you.
Mr. Berlowitz?
For the record, I'd like to clarify a couple things. The urgency in adopting this new ordinance is the fact that the pay ranges for these positions have not been changed in 3 to 4 years. And we are required by state statute to maintain comparability with other public entities that fall within the criteria of the state statute, as well as the Commission on Industrial Relation guidelines. We don't compare with the private sector. We're a public sector employee, and therefore we're expected to compare with other comparable public sector employees to comply with the state statute. If you read this ordinance, it's very clear that it says it is to establish and fix ranges of pay and a pay range schedule. That does not equate into automatic raises based upon those pay ranges. It's adjusting the ranges to reflect what the comparable market is that we're expected to adhere to. It doesn't result in, so it doesn't translate into 46% raises. As I'd indicated at the earlier meeting, the only area where the city has to make a possible 1 or 2 substantial changes is where we have a persons whose range moves based upon the market, and they would be considerably below that new range on that. It just means we have to comply with the minimum of that new range. Any adjustments within those ranges fall under our performance management system, which is based upon employees meeting and exceeding empirical goals that have to be measured. It's based upon their actual performance. This merely updates those ranges to reflect what the current market is, and we're sadly lacking in that area. The timing of it's important to a certain degree because I have directors who have went without raises for some time because we're waiting to do a legitimate full-blown comparability study that would give us credible ranges and allow me a range upon which to make valid and you might say justified changes in their wages. Not going to be double-digit raises per se. It'll be based upon performance. It will depend on the degree of their performance. This merely establishes new ranges of pay for positions. It doesn't equate to automatic raises for employees. And comparability is the state statute. We are required to meet certain guidelines with who we compare, and that's what this data and the ordinance reflects.
Ms. Sanyuk?
Mr. Berlowitz, how many employees did not
already fall within these new ranges? Did we say 5, or am I not?
Oh, no, okay.
Less than that?
Oh, I'm sorry. We actually have one, among my directors, I have one employee that does not fall within the new ranges. Okay? So basically, it's adjusting those ranges. I do have some directors that, because the ranges have not been adjusted in some time, that are pretty much maxed out. I can't do anything to reward them for good performance. They're at the top. Now, not all of them, but I do have some that are at the top. And I could lose good people because of that.
Okay, so there's only one.
Only one that would be.
That didn't already fall in the range.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Are there others that would like to speak? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Councilwoman Blood.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about this, and I just thought I would define what I was talking about earlier. One of the things I was concerned about in the research was I wanted to see at the communities that we were compared to, the upper and lower range, I wanted to see what their cost of living was, because I think that's really important. I mean, you can compare yourself to a community of the same size, but if the cost of living is way up there and the median wage is way up there, then you're almost tipping the balance too much in one direction. And I looked at the good, the bad, and the ugly. And although I don't agree with all of the numbers, the one thing I am not too proud to say is that in general, I think the numbers are almost spot on. There's a couple I question, but not in a way that it's huge. And I think that that's just a matter of where I do my research and where you guys do your research. So I compared the cost of living and the median income for every community, and so it's a pretty good breakdown. And you guys have seen the reports already, so you know what I'm talking about. So I did double check the numbers because that was important to me. It's not that I'm not trusting administration, but I like to see it for myself. And so I do think maybe it's a little higher than I would have come up with, but not to the point of that I think it's something that we need to be overly concerned about. I don't think it's you're talking about a matter of dollars, not thousands. So I just wanted to throw that in since I caused such a big stink about it that I did research it, and that indeed I don't think we're that far off.
Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. You read my mind. We have been working on this for a long time. As we heard last time, Karen Jackson told us about going into the establishment of performance management, then training staff so they understood performance management. It has been a lengthy, deliberative process, not happenstance, not just throwing something out. And because of that, and because we have contracts to be negotiated, we still may have some preference on how we move forward, and we may have some questions. But at this point, I think this has been a very long, very direct, and very deliberative process that has reached its logical conclusion of an up or down vote. I'm ready to do that vote with the amendments because, one, I think we need to have fair wages for our employees. We need to respect that they do a good job for probably the vast majority of them who do a good job. And we need to be able to have some room for those people to be rewarded with the kind of direct performance management standards and guidelines that are established that are not only looked at by the administration, but other people looking at them with the administration. So it isn't just one person, as we heard earlier today. I'm more than willing to listen if somebody has another amendment to make this better or to do it differently. But unless somebody's got something else, I don't have a reason to postpone this for anything else. I mean, it's been very direct, very deliberative. We do need to be prepared in the event that we do go before the Commission of Industrial Relations. And it's not a matter of waiting and then scurrying to do something. I think we should show how we're being direct. We've done the comparabilities, which we're required to do. And at this point, my only real reservation is accountability. We do need that. Performance management is a way to do that. And I'm kind of trusting that all the department heads and the administrator are looking carefully at all of those. And we were told in pre-council that that was happening. So I have no reason not to support this tonight.
Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. I've struggled with this thing for several weeks now. I understand wholly that the management team deserves a raise. They haven't had a raise in a long time, one, I think, in 7 years. There are people on there that I think are underpaid, and I think there are people that are paid what they're worth. At this point in time, I have a philosophical difference with one of the appointed positions being included in that pay scale and pay range rather than by a contract. But I think for the betterment of the city, I'm not going to oppose this. Rather, I'm going to work with the mayor and the city attorney and the city administrator to rectify what I believe is a wrong. So at that point, I will support it, but with that reservation.
Any other, Mr. Preister?
If there is no other discussion, I will move to approve ordinance number 3778.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Blood.
And then I will move to amend by removing the effective dates for the contracts that are currently in it.
Second.
And accepting the otherwise amended ordinance that's in the packet.
I was going to do that separately, but,
Do
and
it.
accepting all of the other amendments that are in the packet as part of this amendment.
Second.
Could you repeat that, Don?
I thought you would ask.
We're just voting
Any
on,
discussion?
just voting on the amendment now.
Please vote. Thank you. Now we need to vote on the original, as amended. Please vote.
Vote is 5-1, motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 8, none. Item 9, ordinance for introduction, first reading. 9A, ordinance number 3779. Kay, could you please read the ordinance?
Ordinance number 3779, an ordinance to adopt the amended budget statement to be termed the biennial appropriations bill to appropriate sums for necessary expenses and liabilities to provide for an effective date.
Mr. Sullivan.
Just want to let the council know, as well as those in attendance, we're going to ask at the second reading that the third reading be waived and we pass it at the next meeting. The reason for that is it has to be on file with the county clerk as well as the state by September 20th.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. The second reading and public hearing on this item will be Monday, September the 8th. Item number 10, public hearing on matters other than ordinances. 10A, public hearing to determine if the structures located at 6906 and a half South 36th Street in Bellevue should be considered a public nuisance and torn down. I'll open for public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to like to speak on this item, please do so at this time.
My name's Tim Slobodnik. I own J&J Small Engine. This building is right behind my building. It has been an eyesore for 20 years. Rat-infested, dump, falling down. As you guys know, you've been cleaning it up for the last 3 or 4 years. So I would like to put my input in that this building should be torn down. It's kids are playing in it, tearing the wood off you guys keep putting up. You know, it's a danger. You know, it's been that way for 20 years. So let's
Thank
just.
you. If I could have you, sign in.
Okay.
Are there others that would like to speak on this item?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I drove by this property on my way home today and stopped and looked at it. And for those of you who have not actually gone out there to look at the place, and I also read the documents that went with it, the property was sold a few years ago and then sold again, and I think one of the next to last owner was some company out of Lincoln, and then there was an individual here that purchased it. You know, from what research I've done on the property, it has unpaid taxes from 2013, I think, of $676, and I don't think the 2014 taxes have been paid on it either. It's going to cost the city, I don't know, probably $3,000 or $4,000 to pay somebody to demolish this and haul it away, and I think it should be done. From looking at the property, it has a septic tank. If someone were to try and rebuild on there, my understanding is they'd have to pay to hook up to city sewer, which is no inexpensive task. So I think you would, and I looked at that neighborhood. I mean, other than that property, it's a fairly decent neighborhood. It really is you can't say it's an eyesore, because from the neighborhood perspective, it really is hidden. It's hidden behind J&J. The house to the left of it, it's kind of behind that property, and then the property on the other side of it hides it. So if you don't know that property's there, you really wouldn't see it. But for any future development, nothing's going to happen there until that structure is torn down. It really is falling apart is an understatement to that property. So I encourage you to spend the city money, tear this thing down. I don't think anybody will house on there again, but I think probably someone like J&J may decide, hey, that'd be a great parking lot, because I think it would be a great parking lot. That's about all you can be able to do with that property. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others that would like to speak on this item? See none, I'll close the public hearing. 10A1, Resolution 2014-23, condemning the structure located at 6906 and a half South 36th Street and ordering them torn down and debris removed. Ms. Sanyuk.
Motion to approve resolution number 2014-23.
Second.
Second by Mr. Knutson. Any discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. 10B, public hearing on proposed State of Nebraska Local Option Municipal Economic Development Act program and submission of ballot question the same. I'll go ahead and open for public hearing on this item.
Chuck Frederick, 1511 Madison Street. I was here this afternoon for the pre-council meeting, and Mr. Carmichael brought up a point that nobody seemed to answer at that time about the wastewater fund money, where it was going, and it sounded like this is exactly where it should be going. All I know is that when Evelyn Wicks was here as a finance director, she moved money around inappropriately in the wastewater fund. And looking at the financials over the last 3, 4, 5 months, there's money right now being moved away from the wastewater fund money. And so I think we have to really be careful how that money is spent and where it goes, but it sounds like it's appropriate for what Councilman Carmichael was talking about. Thank you.
Ms. Sanyuk.
This is a public hearing, so I'm going to ask Mr. Severson, is that true, the wastewater money is being moved? I'm going to ask you to come to the podium.
I have no idea what the gentleman's talking about, moving money inappropriately. Everything's accounted for. We put out 164 pages a month that everybody can take a look at. And there's nothing wrong with any of the wastewater funds or any of the general funds.
Thank you, Mr. Severson.
Yeah.
Are there others that would like to speak at this time?
I'm back. Jim Risto, Bellevue Chamber of Commerce. I guess I won't regurgitate what we talked about this afternoon, but I think, Mr. Cook, you had some questions, and maybe Mr. Carmichael, you might have, and if we could help maybe expand upon those or get a little bit better of understanding.
Well, before the meeting, I just asked you for maybe some clarification on the process with the Citizen Advisory Review Committee. It sounds like if they approve, then there's that says will be subject to a financial verification, and if it's approved, it will be brought to the council. And the example I gave to you was, like if the Planning Commission sent something to us, we can amend it, we can change it, within certain parameters, and I just didn't know if we were locked in that it had to go approve, and then will we have the ability to maybe move something forward that we think would be a good project?
Yes, basically, you have the final say on what comes in front of you or doesn't come in front of you anyways. If you jump up back to the top of the page that we were looking at, Mr. Cook, it does say the Bellevue City Council may assign additional responsibilities to the committee as necessary to carry out the ED program or program changes as dictated by changing project needs and economic conditions. So I think, the spirit of it is that you really are the final oversight. So if there's something that, let's say that if they vote not to advance it, Dan is the city administrator would be the ex officio, so he would still bring that to your attention, and you could still entertain and listen to the same thing. So if you wanted to redirect them, you have that ability to do that. And we were kind of kicking this around if you wanted to put an addendum into this and just put another liner in to state that more clearly, you could do so within this.
I'm good
Okay.
with what you read and what you talked about. Thanks.
Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Mayor. Jim, thanks for putting some work into this. I do appreciate it. I know we have money in the wastewater fund for implementation of an outfall sewer, and I think that needs to be evaluated and moved on that property regardless of what we do here. This is a way for the city to provide a monetary fund for us to bring people into the city, and I think it's important that this go to the public and get their vote. So you do have my support on this issue tonight.
I've learned to zip it after I hear I've got your support. So.
Mr. Preister.
I don't know if you can really answer a question. I just have some heartburn over it personally, a couple of reasons. Coming old school, fiscally conservative, not liking to raise taxes, seeing great needs in our city, seeing Fort Crook Road area and the development that we need to do there, seeing Old Town, what we need to do in the transition, seeing all the bonding that we're doing now for the new public safety building and other things that we don't have cash for, seeing no cash reserve that really gives me heartburn that I think we need to develop, and we're trying to get there. Seeing great needs, but not seeing great wealth of income coming in. I'm concerned about getting overstretched, having too much going on at once, seeing the need, and I supported when we had a direct source of funding that was put on the ballot for the taxpayers to approve the additional sales tax. I can support, and I got behind that. But here, we don't have a direct source of funding. It's all indirect, which means it comes out of the general fund if we choose to do that. That concerns me, because if we commit to doing it and the voters pass it, we're gonna do it. I have no doubt. It will get done, we'll find a way. But what do we lose in doing that? What doesn't happen on Fort Crook Road? What doesn't happen in Old Town? What doesn't happen in our parks? Something's gotta give, and unlike Omaha, which greatly benefited from property tax valuation increases more than they anticipated, our valuations went down. So we don't have additional funds, and we even got that to make up for. So I apologize, you're hearing my lament, but as a very fiscally conservative person who likes to keep the budget balanced and who doesn't like to raise taxes and who doesn't see a whole lot of extra money out there, I don't see the room to do it, and when I don't see a specific source of funding directed to it, it gives me heartburn.
And hopefully I can attack that in two ways. One would be that if you look at this, the scope of this program is to isolate it into one specific area. So we don't try to bite or eat the whole shark in one bite, if you want to take it that way. Is we're going to laser in on one area, work through that, stay focused on that area, and then you move your way through the progressions to Fort Crook, downtown, as those needs develop. But the backside of that is that if this helps us get that project started, if you could imagine a building that goes down there that's valued at $50 million, what that would return into the county and the city in property tax, the additional jobs. And we have statements that if those are in play, do you add somewhere between 100 to 200 jobs down there, and what is the economic impact? So that's your source of return funding down the line. We went through this kind of on the conference center too, as getting that economic catalyst to get something started. While the investment is, whether we want to call it significant in the startup, the payback and the interest is there for the development. It's just a matter of us all kind of meeting at that halfway point. So I think the return is going to come in the coming years too. Whether or not there's a surplus in the city to help us get there, or we can find something. And I agree with you. You're going to have to you'll probably take it from something or eliminate something. Those are choices we'll have to make with the program. But I think hopefully, without rambling on here, it's kind of two-headed, is focus in on one area, work through that area, get that started, because it always seems like we're 5 years behind the curve, because we always say someday we'll get started on this, we get funded, and then 5 years later we're still looking at why something hasn't happened. So if we could move in that direction in one area, start that development, and you see the return, does the funding come in other sources that way done? Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I accept you take one bite at a time of the apple, and then you get to it. I would just like to see it more straight up, that we put it in the budget, we plan for it, we do it each year, and we make those choices. I guess we will possibly end up doing that, but I just prefer a more direct, straightforward way of identifying the funds, identifying the budget, putting it in the infrastructure, getting into loan programs and a host of other things. It just gets complicated, and I get uncomfortable.
Councilwoman Blood.
I have to say that I agree with everything that you said, with a caveat. One of the things, and I talked about this earlier, that has stuck in my craw as a taxpayer for a long time, and we've already addressed this once, but I'm going to say it again, is Bellevue made a huge mistake when they paid off the Kennedy Expressway. That was our opportunity to take that half-cent sales tax and start an economic development fund. And we all know that, and nothing was ever done about it, because that money, what happened was it went to the general fund, so previous councils could say, hey, we're not raising taxes. Well, what they were also not doing is they weren't supporting economic development. We can't keep lamenting, I love that word, what's going on in Papillion, what's going on in Gretna, what's going on in La Vista, when we don't put the things in place that we need to put into place to be successful. We don't necessarily have to fund this. So the voters say they want to do LB 840, and we find that we can't budget-wise fund this. We don't have to fund this, but it gives us the tool that allows us to do that and offer amenities to potential developers that want to come into Bellevue. If we want to run with the big dogs, we have to play like the big dogs. And I certainly am against doing something that's going to make us into a Detroit. That's not what we're looking at, and that's not what we should be scared of. We have a great financial person. We have people in administration who are keeping an eye on the bottom line. When I look at where we started at financially and where we're ending up at, we all worked hard, staff and administration and council, to put ourselves in a better financial position, and we have come miles and miles forward. And now's the time. Either we fall forward fast or we keep being the joke of Sarpy County. We've done a lot of good things. The things that we're concerned about are also the really positive things that we've brought to Bellevue. And so if we want to move forward while we're still alive, because look at all the follies. The Wilson concrete plant. Who buys property without environmental study, and then says we're going to put the police department on there, but we don't know how to pay for it? Who buys overpriced property at 36 and Capehart? I mean, look at all the follies, things that money have been wasted on that we got to clean up. And they're cleaned up and they're moving forward and being developed. We've done good things. So let's take this I don't want to call it a lucky streak, we've worked our bottoms off to move forward. Let's put on our big boy pants and act like the third largest city in Nebraska. Paul Hartnett worked hard to get LB 840 passed in the legislature. And then when you look at the list of cities, Bellevue's not one of them. This is our opportunity to have the tool that we need in our toolbox to be the city that we were meant to be. No more Fort Crook Road development surveys and studies that go on a shelf and everybody laughs at and nobody gets done and we spend tens of thousands of dollars on it. Let's just get it done. That's all I gotta say.
Mr. Cook.
I got the same concerns as Mr. Preischer does. I'm going to support this because it's going to go to the vote of the people. If I had a vote, if this council had a vote on it for the final vote tonight, I don't think I could support it. But I hope it's vetted very well. I hope the local paper looks into things. We have a very high property tax. If you look at the 3 cities that have over 10,000 population in Sarpy County, we have the highest property tax. We have concerns about police pensions, and if they start retiring, what we have to pay off on that. We, a couple months ago, approved the $8 million convention center. There's a lot of stuff on the plate, and what's allowing me to move this forward to the vote of the people, I think the only, and I know I'm saying this from me, not speak for the council, for this thing to move forward, I think there's going to have to be another increase in property tax. We don't have money laying around that we don't know what to do. And if we're going to try to fund this and do projects, I don't see how we can do it without some type of a property and tax increase. So if the citizens want to vote on it, then we'll move forward. That's my own opinion.
Councilman Blood.
But for clarification, the way LB 840, and I understand what you're saying and where you're coming from, but the way LB 840 reads, so we don't have misinformation out on the streets again, is that we're already using an existing half-cent sales tax to fund LB 840. So I hear what you're saying. You're saying that even with that, you think we're gonna have to raise property taxes. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just making sure that it's clarified that LB 840 has nothing to do with raising property tax. It's about using an existing half-cent sales tax. I just want to make sure it's clear. Right, Pat?
I was not clear with that.
We can use any source of funds for 840.
You can
LB
use property
840?
tax, you could use occupancy tax, you could use a portion of your sales tax
To help fund it, but the
to
initial
fund LD
intent of this.
840. But we're not asking for a sales tax increase or a
Right.
property tax increase. And again, the beauty of this program is that if the funds are not available, you don't have to put it in the bucket. So as the funds become available.
So
it's not necessarily
right,
raising taxes.
what I'm saying is there's only so much money in that pot.
I hear what you're
It's a half-cent
saying.
sales tax that funded Kennedy Freeway, and we still collect that money and spend it. We don't have to fund this.
Right.
And the big thing for me is, this has to be decided by September 29th. We can't delay it, or August 29th, 4 days. So we can't delay it and try to get input. It's here today. We gotta vote yes or no. And what is my belief is that we're gonna put this in front of the public, in front of our voters, and I don't know where else this is gonna get funded from. We have committed lodging taxes, some sales tax and stuff to do the convention center. We were told at budget time, anywhere from 1, 2, 3, 4 police officers could retire, and we had one retire. I mean, it was a chief that was a $1 million plus check issued, so there's a lot of liability out there today and in the future. And I don't see how we can fund this without something increasing somewhere else. Unless we're gonna look at staff and, you know, we're gonna cut capital improvement projects. We're not gonna cut salaries. We went through that conversation about where we need to be on a comparability study. So we don't have the money right here today to say, let's set aside $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in the 2015 budget.
Mr. Berlowitz.
I guess one thing to keep in mind is, yeah, it is true that we're looking at funding it with existing revenue sources. it'll still be no different than our normal budgeting process where administration, working with the council, has to prioritize. And it may be deemed that this is important enough where it's a major priority, and we determine where we can free up some dollars. Yes, maybe we make a decision that we quit doing, we do less of something we're currently doing. Or we find some areas that we can achieve some efficiencies. This allows you, if the voter approves it, the ability to at least move forward with a plan that it's required statutorily to do a lot of what we're talking about, other than TIF, which you currently have the ability to do. We talked about community betterment dollars. Steve Carmichael brought up the wastewater fund as a source of dollars. There are avenues in which it can be funded. You as a council will make that decision in terms of prioritizing how the budget dollars are allocated.
Right, and Dan, I appreciate what you're saying, but we had a very tough budget process. We were looking at eliminating numerous jobs, and we had a lot of people out there looking at us and saying, what are you gonna do? So I know we can look at trying to cut down projects and stuff like that, but it's not that easy. Part of my concern is if there's something built down there, how many years will it take for us to get down there and annex it? So, we don't build, but we approve a lot of housing developments and stuff like that, and we may not get there for 20, 30 years to annex it. Now, generally, if it's a commercial, residential, or some type of a business, we try to get there a little quicker, but I think we're putting ourselves in a very difficult position, but I think it's fair to let the voters of Bellevue take a look at this over the next couple of months, and hopefully good information will be given to them. They'll make a good decision, but I'm telling you, we're gonna be sitting here, I'm not saying it's gonna be next year or the following year, but we're gonna sit here. We went 4 cents up this year, we're 4.5 cents up in our property tax this year. We're going up 2 cents next year. And we keep on throwing things onto our plate.
Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree a lot with Don and Paul's comments as this conversation has unfolded. I had a lot of comments at pre-council about this that parroted every one of what you've said. And I stand by those, and I will stand by them throughout this process. The thing I want the public to know, and I want everybody in this room to know, is that we've got to have a plan to implement down there. We just can't stand up and have somebody say, we need a sewer. We got to get a sewer. We got to pay for a sewer. We got to get clients. We have to have a plan. We've not done a good job for a long time with redevelopment of our interurban areas and our commercial areas and our new construction areas, which this is one of those rare times where we have an opportunity to bring in something that this town's never had, in light industrial primarily. I fought with the compensation ordinance for a long time. And Dan, this that we're going to do today, that I'm going to support, I'm gonna tell Dan that performance-based management, I'm gonna hold you accountable to this, to make sure that we can find that money in our budget, because that's exactly my idea of performance-based management is, results. We've put a mandate out to get that money to do what we need to do down there. We have to work as a team to find that money now. There's a lot of risk in this thing. Paul brought up some that we have with increases in fire department costs, increase in police department costs. We've all got to realize that, and we all do realize that. But if we don't work as a team and we don't have a plan to do this, we're going to fail. That's all I got, Jim.
Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I would ask how this will unfold. Where will the language be drafted that will go on the ballot, should we pass this tonight? Who will draft
The
that?
language is right in the resolution. The ballot language is right in the resolution.
Okay.
Mr. Risto, would you like to?
Yeah, and behind that, Don, what we'll do is then, once approved and it's adopted, then we'll start, I think you just saw, I was kind of joking, it's up on the screen tonight on Channel 17, that we'll hold a public forum for education. So there'll be some marketing out there to inform and educate the public as to what the benefits of LB 840 are. So that's really the next process that'll come behind this.
is getting out for the public exposure so they have a good understanding. And then after that, once it's on the ballot, it's in their hands. So it'll be our job to make sure that we promote and market this correctly.
Sure. And should it not pass, then all the language that's in here, the 14 pages or so, is null and void.
Right. And I think then we have to, it's another sit-out period if it's, another 12 or 18 months. I think we can come back at 12 since there's not a tax increase tied to it. It's 12 months, isn't it, Pat?
There's no
It's a shorter period, I can't remember, but it was the other one with the tax that was only every 2 years.
I think you do a special on it, Pat.
If we looked at the last one, LB 840, actually, we had more yes votes than we did for LB 357. So the tax is really the additional half-cent sale tax that went on the ballot probably negated a lot of our votes for LB 840. And I think that if we do our job right, and if the public understands what LB 840 can do, we hope to hit this one out of the park. So, yes.
I would agree, since it's going before the public. If it were just my decision, I wouldn't support it tonight, but because the voters will get the ultimate decision and it's up to them, I will certainly give them the chance to vote on it. So at this point, I too have grave concerns about our spending and our costs and our budgeting, which I know you appreciate.
I do.
So we've got some very tough decisions, and we're gonna have to, we can't do everything, we can't do it all at once.
Road, Grove Road, and a veterans monument in the cemetery.
I'll defer to Mr.
Shuchuk.
Shuchuk.
The motion was that those issues be brought to the attention of the council, and I'll say specifically with Highway 34, if nothing was going to be funded, basically a public acknowledgement that we weren't going to fund anything for Highway 34, put that out there. So it's more of a, I'll say, a conscious decision that's out there in the open. But I understand Mrs. Saniak will probably be making an amendment to the CIP here shortly. Other things were further out, especially the Veterans Monument in the cemetery. That's in, I think, the last year of the plan. And that's certainly something that in 4 or 5 years we'll definitely, or through the years, look at that more closely. Look at, work with the street department, see if there is any real need or desire to do Grove Road. It does serve, what, maybe a dozen houses down there, if that. That's something that we've been through, I don't know how many times, how many years, looking at Grove Road and the expense to improve that. And you can't just throw some asphalt down there. You've got to reconstruct that whole road. But again, the comment from the Planning Commission on that is an item that people have requested as something they would need, whereas compared to a veterans monument is more of a want, and there wasn't an awareness, I'll say, of a public request for that. There may be, but there wasn't the awareness of that. The other item, as far as Gilmore Lake Road, the comment was, why is the city paying for any of it? Why shouldn't the SID or the SIDs who need that road or who were originally responsible for the road paying for it all? That will come back before the council when the later phases of Spring Ridge come to the council for final plat approval. There wasn't, I think it was just a draft agreement out there that was floated by the attorney for the Spring Ridge SID that had the pavement costs or the improvement cost split 25% between the city, the county, and then each of the SIDs 25%. The comment was from the Planning Commission that why is the city paying for any of this? And that, again, will have to be negotiated at the time when the road comes through. I will say that half of that right-of-way is in the city,
and has been for a long time since Green Meadows was annexed. We, excuse me, we took in half that right away, so, but again, that'll be something that, will have to be negotiated at the time, when Spring Ridge comes in. I think originally the Public Works Department just said, let's just take that out of the CIP entirely. We talked about it and decided just leave it in there in case something does happen with it in the coming year. And just as an aside, we did get the final plat in for the first 3 phases, the north part of Spring Ridge. So that'll be coming to the council probably in October.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to say one more thing about the, the CIP that you have. It reconciles to our biennial budget, and so we're good with anything that's on there during that biennial budget period. Some of the things that are out there beyond 2016-17, those are on there. I think they're great for discussion. You're going to let us know whether we need to budget for those in the next couple of years. So.
And we will do that, and I'll start with that next. But before I do that, I just want to compliment the Finance Department for overseeing and managing these things under the direction of our administrator, who's doing a good job. But all of the department heads, I think, have looked at their budgets carefully. They've scrutinized them. They've held down labor costs. They've held down overtime costs. They've held down equipment costs. We've put off some spending that was even necessary spending. And in this case, we've rearranged some things. But within all of that, they're under budget, and we've added some new things that, like the simulator in the new police department, is essential for training the police. So we've managed well, but we've managed well because we've got good staff doing good dedicated work, and they don't get complimented very often. So my thanks to all the staff who are managing their budgets well, and I appreciate the work. Having said that, I am concerned that in the CIP, we have put nothing aside for park development on a park that I have helped lead the efforts to subdivide and to get in place to begin to be a park, and yet not taking one bite at a time of the apple in making that a park over off of 40th Street by the Veterans Home. We already have $4.6 million in the budget for aquatics parks. I assume that it's likely to go over there, but we don't even have a park yet. So I would rather see some of that money be put into park development so we actually have a park where we can put an aquatics development. But I haven't seen the big picture. I like a lot of the things we have in our Parks Master Plan, but even that Parks Master Plan has not been followed. We've not done virtually any of the updates that are in there, and over half of them shouldn't be done. They're more cosmetic, they're just not good things, and I think we can do our own assessment of which are right and which are good and which ones we should do without having a separate study or spending a lot of money on it. But right now, in this program, I would ask Mr. Roberts to explain why we don't have anything for a park, but we've got something for aquatics centers that we don't even have a park to put them in.
The way we approached this was we're putting together the biennial budget. We're doing exactly like what you all were talking about tonight, where you get a good idea, 5 years down the line, still there's nothing done, there's no money allocated for it, any of that. So putting together the biennial budget, we looked at, let's set a goal for 3 years, that the park will be in place, we'll have all that together, and then in the third year we can start with the aquatic center. So we go we're approaching that now, so instead of 2016 and 2018 where we had that, we set that as a placeholder so that we had a goal to achieve, to go for. So now with that placeholder will have to be pushed back another year because, like you said, we don't have the park yet, but we still don't have all the pieces in place on what's going to go where, the place is being purchased now, that is all falling apart. So eventually, we're gonna know where can we put our park. So again, like I said, it's more of just a placeholder, but it was to give us a vision and a goal on what we want to do with it.
Okay, and I can accept that, but I would like to see some progress on the actual park development so that we can take it in measurable, small, affordable amounts. So we continue the progress that we've started making and are kind of in a lull right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. We are in a lull right now.
Okay, good. Thank you for the explanation. Thank you.
And I would like to comment that Tammy Palm and Mike France have been looking at the park master plan as far as what needs to be updated and looking at the few things that have been done and updating those maps or those drawings of the parks, and also what other things need to be done or can be changed in that park master plan. So that is in process now.
And I think that's an annual requirement that's supposed to be done.
I don't know.
A review of it, at least.
I don't know if it's written that it says annually, but it is something that we are doing now, and we
Okay.
can keep up with it.
Good. Thank you.
Ms. Sanyuk.
I do agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation that this CIP address in some way development of the Highway 34 corridor. So as Mr. Roberts has said, even if it only serves as a placeholder, a line item reminder next time this plan is looked at, that, gee, we better be thinking about it and we better be setting aside some money for it.
What are the wishes of the council? Someone like to make a motion? Ms. Sanyuk.
I will make a motion to approve the capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2015 through 2020.
Second.
Second by Councilman Blood.
And I will then make a motion to amend the CIP by designating for fiscal year 2015, $250,000 from the wastewater fund to go towards sewer improvements in the Highway 34 corridor.
Second.
Second by Councilman Blood. Mr. Roberts, do you have a question?
He does.
Mr. Severson.
This is for council. Is there anything in our ordinance that says that we can't build wastewater infrastructure down into the Highway 34 corridor before we've actually annexed it, or?
I think this might be the third time I've said I have no idea tonight, but I have no idea.
Mr. Shuchek has something to say.
I think, based on the interlocal we have with the county, it's something we could probably do and work with the county on that as a joint project.
Well, actually, state statute allows you to extend water and sewer 2 miles beyond your corporate limits. Paving, you cannot pave outside the corporate limits. So we do have the ability to do it. Yeah, and obviously, hopefully jointly with the county to spread the costs. But statutorily, you have the ability to extend both water and sanitary sewer. If you have your water system, you own it 2 miles beyond your corporate boundaries.
And
Financially, we could do it. I just want to make sure we don't go awry of any of our ordinance.
And that is all within our 2 mile jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any, Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. And for further clarification, this puts it in the CIP, but it doesn't automatically mean we're going to spend it or that we're going to do it. So in that time, we've got it as a placeholder, as Councilwoman Sanyuk said, but we don't, if there are concerns or issues with it, we don't have to spend it. We can address those in that time. But it creates the placeholder. It says we want to do something down there. We want to do it, as we all talked about earlier, by doing it in segments, by doing it affordably, by doing it as we can. And this is an appropriate fund, and I like that. It's coming from a designated fund. We have an amount, and I'm much more comfortable with that. So I'm appreciative of the process. Thank you.
So we have a motion, we have an amendment. Any further discussion? So we are voting on the amendment. Mr. Shuchek.
One more comment regarding the Planning Commission's comments and discussions we had internally. Things like water service down there is going to be a project that it's not going to be a city project. It's going to be something that is done through MUD. We certainly have been working with MUD, trying to, get plans in place for water when it's needed, but it's not something that would be part of our CIP, their project. So we're not disregarding water down there. We're not disregarding electricity. We've certainly worked with OPPD on refurbishing their substations down there. Also, Black Hills Energy has a town border station down there. They're when the time comes, they'll be ready to go or ready to improve the infrastructure they have down there. That they're not necessarily city projects, but and through the time since we've been working on this with the utilities, getting ready for the bridge to open, those discussions have been had, and the infrastructure will be in place when it's needed.
Thank you, Mr. Shuchek. Any further discussion? See none, please vote on the amendment. Okay, are you getting all that?
Oh, yes, every single word. All voted yes.
Thank you. Now we need to vote on the motion as
amended.
As amended.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item 11, resolutions, none. Item 12, current business. 12A and B is under consent. 12C, approval of training on Zoll billing software enhancements in the amount of $1,500. Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the Zoll billing software enhancement training contract in the amount of $1,500.
Second.
A second by Mr. Carmichael. Any discussion? See none, please vote. Did Mr. Cook vote?
Mr. Cook. All voted yes.
Thank you. 12D, disclosure and consent regarding legal representation. Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve the disclosure and consent regarding legal representation.
Second.
Second by Ms. Sanyuk. Any discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item number 13, public requests to be heard. Any member of the public addressing the council shall abide by council policy resolution number 35 regarding the principles of conduct and decorum, which states any statements made during city council meetings by the mayor, members of the city council, city official, employees, and members of the general public shall not involve impertinent or slanderous attacks on individuals, regardless whether the individual so attacked is elected official, a city official, or employee, or a member of the general public, and the City Code -2-68 regarding manners of addressing the council. Copies of the aforementioned rules are posted outside the council chambers. Speakers shall limit their presentation to 5 minutes.
Steve Draper at 9807 South 24th Street. My wife and I learned at the last council meeting that our city clerk is retiring next month, the month of September. Kay DeMass has been our city clerk for a long time. And I just want to publicly thank her for her exemplary service to this city. It is a position that requires an extraordinary amount of attention to detail and staying on top of things. It's a position that is not just an 8 to 5 job Monday through Friday. I mean, tonight's meeting is one example of her duties, and she comes in willingly to make sure the job gets done, and in an outstanding manner. And I just want to thank Kay for your wonderful service to this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Draper.
Chuck Frederick, 1511 Madison Street. I certainly echo Mr. Draper's comments too, because she's been somebody who really has been able to, I think, help everybody here in this room, and it's going to be sad to see her go. I think passing that resolution 2014-24 is a bold move. I think it's something that it's only actually a tool at this time. Now you're going to have to come up with how you're going to finance this, which is going to be a challenge, but it is a bold move. And as you know, about 2 or 3 meetings ago, I recommended, because you were asking for slogans or branding for the city of Bellevue, and mine was bold and old, and I still think that's pretty good. I've talked to a lot of people, they like that a lot. I haven't heard anything about any other suggestions, or if it hasn't been announced, I think it'd be nice to have somebody come back or tell us about how it's going as far as for getting this slogan or branding, whatever you want to call it. And again, I said before, we don't need to hire a consulting firm to try to figure out a name for us. I think we have enough smart people here in Bellevue to figure that out for ourselves. Thank you.
Are there others?
I know it's unorthodox and it's late. Today, August 25th, 2014, I've worked my last day in this building. Tomorrow.
You kind of threw us there for a minute.
Tomorrow, your police department and myself will start a new chapter as we officially move our Operation 1510 Wall. The significance of that move can't be overstated. It's been a very long time coming. On behalf of the men and women that work here at the police department, I just wanted to say thank you to this governing body and those that served on it before that made this project reality. I appreciate your vision and your effort. Secondly, and directly related to that, I'd also like to thank the general public for its support of our mission of enforcing the law here in this city and serving their public safety needs. And you don't have to look very hard to find examples of other communities struggling with that relationship. We've been very blessed in our community with their support, and I'm grateful, and we'll never take it for granted. So again, thank you. As always, we will do our very best to make good use of these resources that we have been provided with. In this case, a very spacious new facility that undoubtedly speaks to professionalism and greater efficiencies. So thank you.
Are there others? See none, I'll close the public request to be heard. 14, adjournment. Ms. Sanya.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Mr. Knutson. Please vote. Yes, thank you. Next council meeting will be Monday, the 8th. Happy and safe Labor Day.